Welcome to the latest episode of First Word in Sport. How are you this morning, James?
Yeah, good, Luke. Good, everyone. Yeah, busy enough week, but not as just because of Wednesday night and a bit of football last night. But yeah, apart from that, quiet week on the sports front. But yeah, yourself?
Yep, all good. Obviously, we've just had the epic match involving Alcaraz, literally just finished after 5+ hours. I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit later. Let's crack on looking at the football from midweek, European action, Champions League, Europa League. I think there's one obvious highlight with the Champions League, but, tell us all about it, James.
Liverpool won a game. Comfortably. No, the biggest thing for me was watching the last 5 minutes of the Real Madrid game away at Benfica, and obviously Jose Mourinho there at Benfica. Benfica was 3-2 up against 10 men Madrid when all the games had finished as well, so that everyone was watching that game. It's about 3 or 4 minutes left of injury time. Asensio just got sent off, and then Rodrigo got sent off for arguing as well, his second bookable, so he got sent off down to 9 men, given a foul against Bellingham, which was never a foul.
Okay, but before that, you had the goalkeeper wasting time because he didn't realise that Benfica needed to score another goal. So he was flopping around, doing all sorts of shenanigans because he didn't realise they needed to score another goal.
Yeah, because the information from Mourinho and the staff were that they were fine on goal difference, which they weren't because they were level with Marseille. And then the free kick, which is never a free kick, brilliant cross in. It's not an easy cross either. It's quite a long way away from goal. And Ruben, the keeper, brilliant header, past Courtois, scenes to win them the game to get that goal difference to -2, which knocks out Marseille, which is quite funny with the Mason Greenwood. And I've seen last night and this morning a bit of rumours about De Zerbi's handing his notice at Marseille. But that meant Real Madrid finished outside the top 8, which is always entertaining. Another team finished outside the top 8 was obviously the reigning champions, Paris Saint-Germain, who everyone last summer was fawning over, saying this is the best team since Barcelona of Messi, Villa, Pedro, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets. I mean, talk about a team that was, by the way. Outrageous. Fawning over how good Luis Enrique was, blah, blah, blah. Heard it all before. Didn't qualify in the top 8 a second year running. Probably because the French league, they don't play any tough games at all. And when they play European football.
James. Right, the big difference between the team from last year and this year has been injuries. They have been decimated by injuries at various points. That midfield trio is absolutely crucial to what they did last year. And again, here, I think they had one of them. It was they lost, what's his name?
They can buy whoever they want. Any French team didn't. It's quite entertaining seeing them out of it.
You're asking why they're so poor this year. It's been injuries all year. There is a reason why the levels have dropped off.
Yeah, they were overrated last year, massively at times. And then, obviously, City were delighted that Real Madrid didn't get the goal. But apart from that, Arsenal had a comfortable win. Liverpool thrashed Carabag. Newcastle's performance, by all accounts, was impressive, and obviously that miss by Harvey Barnes. Yeah, I mean, it's always good fun when you have 18 games going on.
The Newcastle game was a strange one in that they started very slowly. Newcastle, Paris Saint-Germain could have been out of sight. Hung around, got the equaliser, and it was obviously they had chances at the end. The only thing I would say is I don't think Howe was nearly aggressive enough towards the end. Obviously, they needed to win that game to make the top 8, and they were very, very defensive until very, very late on when that Paris Saint-Germain defence was there for the taking.
Yeah, I'm surprised because they're already going to be in the top, in the playoffs, Newcastle. So if they lost or drew, it really made no difference. They could have had a go at them. They played 3-5-2, which he called on Monday as well. So a little bit of solidity. Obviously, the first couple of minutes when Pope saved the penalty was brilliant. And then they got that equaliser right on half time. I thought PSG would have gone on to win that game. But yeah, fair play to Newcastle getting the result, but didn't want those 2 extra games, especially with their injuries.
Obviously, a good win for Chelsea, 3-2 away at Napoli. Obviously, got a very soft opening goal. I don't know. I mean, it's the sort of thing when you see a defender jump like that, block the free kick with his hands. I mean, it must drive you absolutely mad as a manager when your players are doing that sort of stuff. Just literally gifting Chelsea the opening goal. Yeah, they got themselves back into it. Obviously, took the lead through Højlund. And then actually 2 really good finishes from Pedro.
Yeah, Palmer came on, didn't he, at half time for Neto, which changed the game a bit. And yeah, João Pedro's a good player. He is a good player. He's a good finisher as well. I don't know where we've talked about it. I don't know where his best position is for Chelsea. Obviously, it will change depending on who they play, because sometimes they will need to do that. But if Enzo all fit, and Estavio, trying to fit them all in their preferred positions is going to be a struggle from Rosinia. But he started quite well there. He's got some confidence, and that's what players need. It's a good result.
What was interesting was Reece James playing at centre back. So, no.
That changed at half time, though, didn't it? They realised then that he's not a centre back. He's a right back, and he's nothing more than a right back. He is a good right back if he can stay fit.
So I do think Rosinia is interesting because he is very much sort of splitting opinion in that if you speak to a lot of Chelsea fans, they don't particularly rate him, despite obviously, 5 wins in 6 games he's had. But what's interesting is if you listen to the media and things like that, there's a growing number. You know, I was listening to TalkSport yesterday and on the way to pick the kids up, and Darren Bent was obviously, Rosinia's having, it'd been made to be such a scapegoat and blah, blah, blah. And that nothing he could do will win over the crowd, this sort of thing. Everyone wants him to fail. But I think he misses the bigger picture a little bit in that the performances have been incredibly average. The results have been amazing, but that will catch up with you sooner rather than later.
Yeah, those performances need to improve, but he hasn't had much time on the training pitch. This is the thing. They're playing Saturday, Sunday, then midweek, travelling, then back. They're obviously playing in Premier League this week. They've got the second leg of the Carabao Cup next week away at Arsenal. So he doesn't get much time to implement his ideas on the training pitch. Right, Napoli Wednesday night, travel back, come back, and who have they got this weekend? They've got
West Ham at home.
West Ham at home on Saturday, tomorrow afternoon. So you have no time. Literally, it's recovery day yesterday, and it's a bit of a run through with the West Ham tactics and a bit of set pieces played today. There's no time to implement your ideas, really. It's bang, bang, bang. So then getting top 8 is good because they have those 3 weeks in February coming up.
He has he's had a very favourable schedule in the Premier League since his introduction. We often talk about look at Thomas Frank. Obviously, Tottenham have got a dreadful run of games coming up. Obviously, they picked a good time in many respects to get Rosinia in.
Maybe that's why I looked at it and looked at the fixture list and went, actually, he's got a few easy games that we fancy winning. 2 Champions League games, including one at home to Paphos last week, which is, I know they only won 1-0. However, it was a game that they were going to win. They meant, well, let's make the change now rather than waiting till whenever it's a tougher time.
I think the overall takeaway as well was just obviously, 5 out of the 6 English teams qualified for that top 8. They have to change. I hear a lot of people, who like the format, don't like the format. I prefer this format to how it used to be, but it does need some serious tweaks, I think. Not least English teams being able to play against other English teams, and they also have to get rid of some of the dross. There's just too many awful teams in this competition. Even if you got rid of, I don't know, another 6 or 8 teams, it just makes it that bit stronger.
It's all about money for UEFA, though, isn't it? They want the 8 games. It's more money, more revenue stream, more adverts for them. That's why they've done it. And it's essentially a Super League anyway, once you get... But yeah, the strength of the Premier League won't look good for UEFA, surely. And they have to change it, because otherwise the English teams are always going to be in the top 8, essentially, because they never play against each other. And the English teams are the best team, barring obviously 3 or 4 others, but Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, to get their act together, always going to be up there, kind of thing, because of the nature of it. They're not playing against each other, taking points of each other. I mean, look at Tottenham.
I think what's been interesting, if you look at just how easy certain teams, their fixtures. So I think Tottenham had, obviously they played Paris Saint-Germain, but they only had 1 win against a team who finished in the top 24 teams, and that was Dortmund, who finished 17th. This is a team who ended up, cruising to qualification, top 8, really.
It's remarkable, isn't it? If you think about it, they finished 4th in the league, and they don't play anyone in, let alone the top 16, let alone anyone in the top 8. That game was against Dortmund at home against 10 men as well. It's just like, count your lucky stars, Tottenham. It's Christmas come early for them. And Frank must be going, this is keeping me in a job.
Well, I would say Arsenal also had a particularly easy, they had, with the exception of Bayern Munich, who they had at home, they had a very easy set of fixtures as well.
Yeah, they played Atletico Madrid at home, didn't they, as well, I think. But yeah, it's just, it is a luck of the draw kind of thing, who you get. There's no, and the country protection obviously is not happening now for the playoff round either, from the playoff round. So Arsenal and Bayern Munich play at home, will get a home draw second leg until the second semi-final, isn't it, as well? So if they both make the semi-final, they both get home draws in it, don't they? I think that's what the reward is for finishing first and second.
Yes, you guaranteed home draws, second leg all the way through.
And obviously there's no away goals, haven't been for a while. So yeah, I mean the draws starting in at 11 o'clock UK time to 12 o'clock CET. So, and they are the 17th and 18th of February and the 24th and 25th of February. A couple of interesting ones will be that. So you got Newcastle either play Monaco or Karabakh, nice little trip to Azerbaijan. And then they could end up, and then don't Man City have to play someone like a Paris Saint-Germain or Inter, aren't they, in the same bracket? So there are some quite interesting games coming up in the last 16 when it comes up, when the draw is on the 27th of February after that playoff round for the Champions League.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see, but I think I do like. I thought Wednesday was good value, it was good fun. But yeah,
it's not Paris Saint-Germain. It's Real Madrid or Inter Milan. Man City will get more than likely, so that will be probably the highlight of that last 16. Sorry, I'll let you go on there.
So Europa League, a couple of games last night. The only point I would make, obviously, my big takeaway from last night, and it's a real bugbear, is managers and the starting lineups they both picked. So obviously for Villa, they have a big injury crisis at the moment anyway, right? They're guaranteed to finish in the top 8. So all that's at stake is finishing the top 2, and that obviously guarantee of their home draw. Obviously, there's other considerations. There's a little bit of considerations in terms of money, obviously you get for winning each game. But as a general rule, it doesn't matter. And yet you saw a Villa team last night that had players like Martinez and Anana and Watkins. And, the situation was even worse for Forest. They had all sorts of, first team players, situation where realistically they couldn't finish in the top 8. They weren't going to not finish in the top 16, top 24. So literally all they were playing for was a position within, places 9 to 24th, right? And you're risking so many of your superstars. You've got a massive game against Crystal Palace on Sunday. It makes 0 sense. And even the ones they did rest, like Gibbs-White, Murillo, they brought them on to play when they were 3-0 up. I mean, it's so brain dead. I just don't get it, and I don't think I ever will. It's the sort of same argument you have about NFL and quarterbacks when they should come out and all this sort of stuff. It's, Villa may well pay the penalty because Watkins tweaked the hamstring, I think, last night. He may not be fit for Sunday. And if he's not fit for Sunday, then that's on Unai Emery, and ego and everything else. There was no need for him to play all those players that they did.
Yeah, preaching to converted. Footballers are just way behind. They just don't rest players when they should do at all. They literally don't see the bigger picture. They only see that thing like that. And even with all the sports science going on and everyone in the red and etc., they just don't. I don't know why it is, because I see other sports and they do rest players and they know that this game's not irrelevant, but it's a chance to rest your players. And I said before, don't even have them on the bench. Sit up in the stands with your wives and your kids and your family and your friends, rather than getting warm-ups and things like that. Yeah. And that Watkins injury, you just hope it's not a 6-week hamstring injury, although you have bought a replacement in.
It didn't look like it. It didn't look like a 6-week one. It looked like the tiniest of tweaks, or he felt something, and he was able to stay on the pitch for another 5 minutes or so. It wasn't one where he's felt something, pulled up, and had to go off straight away. So it didn't look a bad one, if I'm honest. But the point remains that, and it's not just a case of after timing, is these clubs should just be a lot more aware of, as you say, the bigger picture. Let's touch on a couple of things. Obviously, the big thing at the moment, the transfer window. Lots going on. Transfer deadline day is on Monday. I think the big news story, I guess, in the last day or two has been Strand Larsen. It's not guaranteed to go through. It had looked like he was going to go to Palace for, it looked about, so it's something like 45 million and another 5 million in add-ons. Absolute insanity.
I actually feel sorry for the kid because he got messed around by Newcastle in the summer. Although the Newcastle fans and Newcastle media might not like it, they messed him around, went to go and buy 2 other players after him signing a new contract in the summer. Now, Leeds made an offer, £35 million a week, 10 days ago, rejected. Talk about West Ham, they obviously bought a couple other players, they're not buying him. Palace made the bid, or said they were going to make a bid, didn't follow it up because they want Gesson on loan from Villa, who they wanted last year from Nice as well. So now Strand Larsen's sitting there like going, well, I'm now second choice here. Got to wait on Mateta leaving as well, and I could still be at Wolves again come Tuesday. Feel sorry for the lad, but 40 million pound is just.
So I think for him is the Gesson deal makes no difference because they play different positions. I think it will relate more to Mateta and then sorting that deal out in terms of where he goes. Obviously, with Mateta, he's been linked with Forest, although that seems a strange link given that they've obviously got that Luca on loan from Napoli. It didn't make a huge amount of sense. I've seen Tottenham linked with Mateta. There's obviously Villa were linked with Mateta before Abraham. That's not going to happen now. But I suspect that Mateta leaving would be the only thing that they're sort of wary of at the moment in terms of that Strand Larsen deal. Because no one else is going to offer the money that Palace are.
Amazing amount of money. that's been touted for a 26-year-old lad that really hasn't done much, especially in the Premier League.
And I think that's the thing is, I mean, you look at some of these deals at the moment, and the numbers are just crazy. Obviously, Villa signed Abraham earlier in the week at 18 million, I think it was, give or take. Almost looks a bargain compared to some of these other deals.
Well, when Oscar Bob goes for 35 million quid to Fulham. Yeah,
so,
madness.
Paqueta's gone back to Brazil.
Yeah, there was some chat about Spurs making an offer for Raheem Sterling this morning, who's been let go by Chelsea in the last 48 hours. I like to talk about Raheem Sterling because he obviously left QPR at a young age, London lad, went up to Liverpool, highly successful at Liverpool under Brendan Rodgers. Obviously, should have won the league, but Gerrard slipped and Rodgers' ego got better of him in that game. And then, it was a big choke by Rodgers and Gerrard. Well, Gerrard, what happens anyway? But he then obviously went to Man City for big money. Highly successful there under Guardiola. Won an awful lot of trophies. Integral part of that team. First big transfer by Todd Bowley when he took over at Chelsea from Abramovich years ago. 45 million, 6-year contract, 300 odd grand a week. For a guy that's had played a lot of football and was showing signs of declining, but not a massive decline. Back to London, he's thinking, fair play, he will go there. Also had some personal issues with a couple of robberies in his house, which can't be a nice experience. And he's just been frozen out for the last 18 months, 2 years by Maresca, and obviously now Rosini's not playing him at all. Let go. So it must be quite tough. I know he's on 300 grand a week, but the lad still wants to play football. But he has played a lot of football from a young age. That's the concern I would have about some of these English players. They're playing a lot of football at 16, 17. And their career is almost over at 28, 29.
I would say two things about it. I would say one is he could have sacrificed wages and got forced to move elsewhere, okay? If he was that bothered about playing, right? And then secondly, he doesn't have a skill set, I think, that translates particularly well when you get a little bit older, given that he struggles to kick a ball at times. I watch him. It's just one of the worst players I can remember from a sort of technical point of view. It just absolutely baffles me how he's had as much success as he has. For someone who struggles to pass the ball, kick a ball, honestly, literally, if you ask me, possibly the most overrated player. Obviously, he's had some great times, but technically abysmal.
Do you ever remember his free kick at Chelsea 4 years ago, where he took it and it hit like top of the Matthew Harding stand in a Premier League game, and he was just laughing at it? He tried one of those kicks, when you just try and hit the top of the ball, like Ronaldo did back in the day, and Sabozai's trying to do, and trying to hit it over and bend it down, kind of thing. Just carried on going over the top of the Matthew Harding stand, and he just looked and went, when your technical ability. I just heard there was just some rumours this morning about him at Tottenham. Now that could just be just 2 + 2. Tottenham needs some players. However,
Tottenham is short. Tottenham is short on that right hand side, particularly with obviously Porro obviously struggling a little bit now. Obviously Kulusevski, obviously Brennan Johnson's gone. They just don't have much in the way of numbers on that right hand side. So you could see Sterling play there, but just not a signing any big team should really be making, to be honest. Gesson is an interesting one. Obviously, Villa signed him last summer. Looks like Palace. He's going to go to Palace on loan with a deal that I don't know exactly what the clauses are in terms of becoming permanent in the summer. I don't know how to say this kindly about him, but it's genuinely one of the worst footballers I can remember seeing at Villa. He's absolutely abysmal.
Not seen enough.
I just hope the clause is something like he has to play one game, and so it's not a case of realizing just how ordinary he is.
Yeah, not good when you spend that much money under your financial issues and you're bidding him off 6 months later with 2 goals and 29 appearances or something. Yeah, not be a good time. The only one thing for Tottenham and Liverpool is that I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Robertson does make that transfer to Tottenham. There's still legs in that. His legs have gone as well, but there are still. He wasn't great on Wednesday night, by the way. People might say, but he's unfortunately the shadow of the player he was when he was at his pomp undercut.
So it does look like Disasi may be going to West Ham on loan. I don't know, not been confirmed yet. Not a bad signing for him, actually. Similar situation in Villa last year. I was talking to a Crystal Palace fan earlier in the week and actually said to him that, getting one of these Chelsea centre-backs out of there, like they did do with Chalabar last year, would give them maybe a little bit of depth that they need at centre-back. But yeah, I think Disasi would do a job at West Ham, given how poor they are at centre-back. Looks like Forest put a bid in for 20 million for Ayari. I don't know why they bothered. He's much better than that. It's Forest are clearly keen to spend some cash, although I would sort of, I don't know how it's all going to work for them from a financial perspective, because they've been borderline recently and they continue to spend and spend and spend. I know they sold Elanga in the summer, but it feels inevitable that Gibbs White or Murillo or Anderson will have to leave there.
I think you called it out. I think they're trying to buy now because they know that Anderson's off and they know that pretty much Gibbs White, also he signed a new contract, didn't he, after the Tottenham debacle where he was going, he wasn't going, he was going, he wasn't. Signed a new contract. That will have a release clause in that contract. And I imagine Anderson will go to a Champions League club, whether that's Man United, Man City.
You said Champions League club, James. Man United aren't Champions League.
Could well get into it, considering how rubbish together. If they only have to get top 5, you're not confident of Liverpool and Newcastle getting top 5 under the current managers. I am. Aren't even, sorry.
I do think that potentially the story of this transfer window is what Crystal Palace are doing. So Dougie Freeman left there, obviously was very highly rated. He's been replaced by a guy called Matt Hobbs, who came from Wolves. And, genuinely, a Brennan Johnson, Strand Larson, even Gesson trio, spending, if the Gesson one was made permanent, spending well over 100 million on those 3, I think it'd be up there with one of the worst transfer windows I can remember from any club. And it's actually the type of one that would massively set back Palace, going forward. Palace have to be a bit careful. You can't keep losing all these, your Gerhys of the world and, replacing them with absolute rubbish, because very quickly, you'll find yourself struggling to stay in the Premier League.
Got to be careful, Palace, because at the moment, no manager. Obviously, in the summer, he's on holiday at the moment. Glasner, he doesn't really care per se. Yeah, they've got to be very careful not to be drawn into a relegation fight.
Obviously, I knew you'd enjoy seeing. I heard Roy Keane telling everyone that Michael Carrick should get given the job this week.
It's just hilarious, isn't it? How can you change your mind that quickly? Well, the only thing I can think of is that I don't know why he's changed his mind on 2 results against 2 great results and 2 much improved performances. But when the bar's that low under Amarin, they beat Man City out of form and they won against Arsenal. Fair play. He can't suddenly go, there's the job again. And Kelsa Breeze are back to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer issues where they won that game in Paris and Rio Ferdinand on TV is given a job, 10-year contract, etc., etc. This is the issue, appointing an interim manager who is a former player who has affiliation to the club, affiliation to the fans. When they have a couple of good games, couple of good results, and then you get people in charge like Ineos who don't have a clue going, we might give him a chance now. full time because there's a load of people, a load of noise from the big personalities, especially at the club at Manchester United. And he gave him a job, and he's underqualified. He is totally underqualified for that job. No one will ever change my mind on that at all.
I would love to see him get that job.
That'd be hilarious.
In some respects, I almost want him to make the Champions League just to see him get that job, because I just don't think people realise how different it is when you have effectively he has 15 games left this season, where he has almost a fully fit squad. None of the players are fatigued. They're only playing once a week, maybe the odd second game. Come Europe next year when you have 15 to 20 weeks potentially in the year where you have 3 games in a week, managing a squad. The other thing is you get your tactics found out as well. So people will actually have videotape of how you're playing with these players. And you see it in other sports as well, where when new managers come in, there isn't much footage about how they want to play. It's a bit like even something like cricket, where batsmen may come on the scene and smash it everywhere, and it takes a little while to understand where their weaknesses are, and then suddenly there's footage out there. Everyone will target those weaknesses, and it's just a matter of time. But he is out of his depth. Fair play. Obviously a couple of great results, but actually, the game against Fulham will be much more interesting because they can't just sit back deep and hit them on the counter attack. At home, they'll have to actually come and play.
I thought he was appointed on. He understood the Manchester United DNA of going down the wing, getting costed in exciting football. Let's see it against Fulham on Sunday then. He won't do it. He'll just play the same way, I think, and they'll try and counter-attack Fulham. Why would he change? But anyway, yeah. Just these pundits changing every 2 seconds, yeah. One thing on the punditry and on the media that winds me up is how they continually just get told what to write, especially the written media, from the clubs for their info. They just get told what to write. Very rarely do they write an opinion that hasn't come from the club's hierarchy to say, write this, please, and I'll keep your contacts and your access. I see it all the time, especially with Liverpool and Newcastle during the summer when they were talking about Isak deal and all this business. It winds me up. You've got to take a pinch of salt what the media write, because they've just been told what to write by the clubs. Just ignore them most of the time, and they almost do it to troll us, kind of thing. But because Liverpool this week, obviously, with Slot, there were some rumours Sunday night that he was leaving. Obviously, not happened. But the local media and the Athletic saying that he has this full confidence from the board. Well, that's clearly not true, considering there's massive holes in that squad, and they haven't given him any money in January, and they've spoken to a Fabregas, a Nagelsmann, and an Alonso. So how can he write that piece in the Athletic, James Pearce, and then say, oh yeah, they have full confidence in him, when they don't? So I always find it quite entertaining when they can write that.
One of the reasons we did this podcast was because we get so frustrated when you see certain narratives in the media, whether it be written press, social media, TV, pundits, and saw a good example of it. Actually, it's from a different sport, but it relates to football, back to football, and that is someone was talking about Drake May and Sam Darnold, NFL quarterbacks, and how the narrative around the pair of them is so different. So if Darnold makes mistakes, it's obviously him falling apart, choking. If Drake May makes mistakes, it's just him, a young buck sort of growing. And, people have it very clearly in their mind as to what their opinions are of those two players based on, preconceived ideas that they're not actually necessarily watching what's going on. And we see it with football all the time in terms of certain players. So, Cole Palmer would be a good example where everything, Cole Palmer can simple pass. Oh, that was amazing. That was amazing. Everything Cole Palmer does is amazing. He can never do any wrong. And people just have this preconceived ideas. as to these footballers, and it all comes from, the press and pundits.
Yeah, we see it all the time, unfortunately. But yeah, I find it quite entertaining how they chop and change their views very quickly.
There was quite an interesting story out of the Chinese Super League this week, where I'm not sure how many teams it was. A huge number of the teams are starting on negative points because of various match fixing scandals.
I think it was it 9 teams have been fined as well? Something like that for match fixing. Along with the Turkish league, obviously, they're still investigating all the players there and officials, more importantly, the officials. Coming this way, lads, we've obviously seen it in Italy. Obviously, Juventus have not been done once, have been done twice. I just put my betting hat on for a second. I just can't not see it happening in closer to home, unfortunately.
I think you'd be naive to think that it wouldn't be possible, just because of the sums of money involved. I've said this many times before, but if you were to bribe a referee or official, they don't get paid that much relatively. You could comfortably get millions and millions of pounds down on big football matches. The importance of referees, and it's not always just money, bribery. It might be, threats to family. It could be anything, So I always think you'd be naive to think that these things don't happen. I mean, we've just seen it in basketball, college basketball as well, in America. We know it happens in other sports. So, we're not saying it's definitely happening, but be naive to think that it's not beyond the realms of possibility.
I think it's definitely happening. I just don't know to what extent and to what level, but lower leagues, 100% is happening throughout Europe and Asia and wherever throughout the world. It happens in every sport, unfortunately. We see it. It's just not talked about because the authorities don't want it to be on the front pages and the back pages for wrong reasons. And they want to keep it in-house kind of thing until it's...
Well, I think one of the problems you have is that you can't just accuse certain people of doing certain things, right? So obviously there is a legal process with regard to all that type of stuff. I see there's, following on from what you were saying last week about going to away matches, I see BBC, one of the main headlines in football today was talking, I think the headline was cages, crushes and stabbings, talking about English fans travelling abroad and what an issue it's becoming.
Yeah, those 2 Chelsea lads getting stabbed by screwdrivers on Tuesday night in Naples. And one of the lads was saying they were just walking from a bar with no Chelsea affiliation, not singing. Obviously, the locals knew they were Chelsea fans because why would you be that many of them in Naples the night before a Champions League game? And they just got stabbed, lucky to not have any serious injuries, obviously hospitalised. But you just don't hear about it in this country, in the UK. It only happens when fans go abroad. And it's not, okay, there are some individuals, let's not be blind, turn a blind eye to it, that will want to go out there. If there is a scrap, they'll have a scrap. But majority of the time, it is local hooligans or local thugs who are just waiting, and they know they can get a free hit on English fans because the media and the UEFA will just say it's English fans. As I said, we don't tell foreign teams or foreign clubs, you have to go and meet in the centre of London or the centre of Manchester, wherever it is, at 5 hours before the kickoff, and we'll march you up in baton-ridden police people, etc. You're free to go whenever you want up to the ground. Never seen any real issues at all. It's only when you go abroad and the English clubs go abroad, it winds me up and nothing's been done about it. Hence the reason why I highlighted it last week.
So let me just answer one football question which we got from at Steve Perry Domin. He goes, Luke's thoughts on Villa signing Douglas Luiz. I remember him being fairly happy when he was sold. Also, in general, what does he feel about Villa's recruitment? Seems to be more misses than hits. You are absolutely right. I was delighted when Villa sold Douglas Luiz. I always thought he's an absolute show pony. And he's one of these players who he can look super, super impressive visually at times, but I don't necessarily think he's incredibly effective. And I think certainly saw towards the end of his Villa career that I don't like his attitude particularly. I think he's very I'm trying to think of the word. I'm not sure he's the sort of player you want in the trenches for you as such. You know, when you look at the likes of John McGinn at Villa, Luiz couldn't be more different, and it's just probably a Brazilian thing rather than a Scottish thing. But it's I don't know. Weirdly, in this situation, I actually think it's quite a good signing because Villa's options are so limited. You know, apparently it's going to cost $2 million loan fee. Villa don't have many options. They need central midfielders. He is a quality central midfielder. I just didn't think he was a player to take Villa to the sort of the next level. And you know, I'd be mortified if they make the deal permanent in the summer. But for someone to fill in, he'll be hungry. He knows Emery's system. You know, fitness is obviously an issue when he was at Forest. I do remember seeing him play quite well for Forest. It was an away game. I can't quite remember who they were playing. I just remember the first half. Forest actually played really well. He actually played really well, but he just couldn't stay fit. So I actually think that for Villa, he's going to be a good signing as long as it's short term. It looks like he wants to be keen. He wants to be there as well, you know, which is part of the battle. In terms of general recruitment, it's tough to get away from the fact that their hands are so massively tied because of PSR, cost ratios in terms of Europe, wage bills, all these things. And it's just a constant buying and selling of players. You know, Gesson was, fairly disastrous, but it looks like he was the final one. You know, one of the big things to realise as well is that all the recent signings this window have been done by new director, Alabi, whereas all the other ones were done by Monchi, who left in the summer. So, I mean, obviously they had some successes, like your Rodgers and Durans of the world, huge successes, Tielemans. So there has been some really good ones, but there's also been some pretty poor ones. What's weird at Villa is they've got a ton of players who are out on loan. So people like Dobbin, Illing Jr., all these guys who they really need to get off the books, cash in on them rather than just loaning them out to championship teams for $1 or $2 million a year. They just need to get rid of them, but it's much harder said than done. So recruitment, I think you have to say they've done a really good job, really, if you think that they're second or third place in the league and they've spent nothing, in terms of transfer fees relatively to every other club.
Definitely more hits than misses. The one thing on Luiz is, as you said, he knows the league, he knows Emery, and he'll take minutes off other players. I know it sounds silly, but when Tielemans is out and McGinn out for 6 to 8 weeks longer, he'll need to take minutes, replace those minutes. He needed an extra body, and it just seemed sensible. He knows the system, he knows the country, knows the league. I have no problem if I was a Villa fan, him coming back in. As long as he can keep, the big one for Villa is keeping Onana fit somehow.
I mean, just touching on that, right? So third time this season, the panel has met and said, oh, yes, that should have been a second yellow card and a sending off against Ghana, against Villa. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's, they scored 2 minutes later. I mean, that could have massive, implications. It's just so boring every week, them coming back saying, oh, yeah, we made a mistake. We made a mistake. We made a mistake. Stop making such poor mistakes.
I did like how they buried that in the Champions League as well, midweek in Champions League, when everyone's talking about Champions League, and they just chuck a little news story out, hide it, so no one talks about it.
And
it happens so often that they put these big decisions or big things out when there's a load more other football going on. So it's kind of hidden, so they don't get highlighted what a shambles of a decision it is or was.
And not only that, right, but Kamara, Tielemans, McGinn, right, all out with injuries caused by tackles. So not muscle injuries, okay? Polina did, obviously Kamara, didn't get booked. Oh, it was too early in the game. Should have been a clear yellow card. Tielemans was hacked down from behind. Wasn't even given as a free kick, let alone a booking or anything else. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. I think Villa have been the most foul team by a country mile this season. Haven't had a single penalty yet this year.
Really? That's remarkable. That's crazy.
Go figure. Anyway, right, where were we? Should we talk about this weekend's football quickly, and then we'll go on to other sports?
Yeah.
So I think probably there are a couple of pretty interesting games this weekend. Obviously, Leeds Arsenal. It's tough not to start there, given that Arsenal have got this 4-point lead. Tricky game for them. Obviously, they spanked Leeds in the reverse fixture earlier in the season. What was it, 5-0 or whatever it was? It's going to be interesting to see how Arsenal, whether they look nervous or not. I'm intrigued. I don't quite know.
Well, they had a week off, didn't they? Arsenal, I know some of them are on the bench, but they'll get back to Saliba if he's fit. I know he will be fit. Rice thought he was suspended in a week's heel, but Saka obviously play. I see Arteta is saying, Kai Havertz is back. He missed him so much. Well, why do you spend £65 million on replacing him then? But anyway, yeah, they can't afford Arsenal to go there and not dominate the game. They should go there. People say it's a tough place to go. Let's be honest, Leeds are where they are for a reason. They've just come up as well. They are quite an ordinary side. They're nothing special. They played all right in the last couple of weeks. They played all right against Everton on Monday night as well, when arguably they should have been 2-0 up. Calvert-Lewin missed that chance as well. But they didn't kill the game off. Arsenal, if they want to be champions, they have to go there and win. There's no excuses. A draw is not going to cut the mustard there at Eden Road tomorrow afternoon. They need to go there and stamp their authority. I just don't know who. They have to make a decision up front who they're going to play, because Gyökeres just isn't good enough for them. He's just not going to win you the title, I don't think. And you're playing him, you said it as well, they're playing him because they're kind of forced to play him because they spent so much money on him. And they got Havertz and Jesus back fit. Yeah, let's see. I didn't realise actually on the weekend against Man United, they didn't put Havertz or Nordgaard on even on the bench and fit as well. So good luck keeping everyone happy when you got that bigger squad.
So I think obviously Liverpool, Newcastle, Saturday evening. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Obviously, Liverpool have got a few injury issues with Frimpong now being injured. Konate should return, I assume, which will help. I am bored of hearing fans of certain teams complain. Unless you're a Tottenham fan, right? Do not complain about injuries. Tottenham's injury crisis is ridiculous. How many players they've got out injured, and it's happened in previous years as well. If you're an Arsenal fan and you're complaining about 2 injuries, which is what's happened at certain points this year, honestly, give it a rest. Liverpool missing 3 defenders or something. Honestly,
they're missing 4 defenders, aren't they? They're missing Gomez.
One of those is Gomez, who
he never
can't even count. Right, one of them's a young lad who they spent 20-odd million on, but they've known he's been out for ages. Right, so in terms of
they didn't build a squad in the summer, and that's partly on 85% on Slot and 15% on Edwards and Hughes. But so no Bradley, no Frimpong, no Gomez, no Leone. Don't know who will play right back. They can't play Szoboszlai right back tomorrow night because they need him in midfield. So whether they're going to play Jones right back or they play Endo right back, no idea. Yeah, Liverpool looked good against Karabakh, whatever, but first into the the playoff round, first team from Azerbaijan to get in that. But any team you come up against Liverpool, you want to play football and try and play football. Liverpool, most of the time, will beat you because they've got better players. They have got some very good players. It's when teams come and the blueprint's there. It's in black and white. So what Newcastle do tomorrow night, will they play 3-5-2? I think they probably will, I think they'll go back to 3-5-2. I think they'll they'll play Bruno. I think they'll just say to him, even if you're not 100% fit, we need you in that midfield. We can't not have you playing. He's so vital for Newcastle. They look a complete different side with him in it and him out of it. And stats prove it as well. They just don't win games when he's not playing. And yeah,
I'll tell you who had a good game. Just quickly, I'll tell you who had a good game for Newcastle, which was Ramsey for the first time since he's almost been there. In terms of obviously Joel Linton and Bruno were out, and he filled in one of those spots, and he actually played well. And I'll be amazed if he isn't one of the starters against Liverpool on Saturday evening in there.
Yeah, with Liverpool Newcastle games are always good fun. They're going back to the 2-4-3 games when Conor Moore and when Newcastle bottled it and they were so far clear and Conor Moore won. They were 12 points clear and United won that league that year. Conor Moore the 4-3, the Fowler goals. There's been always good games. Liverpool, last minute winners. I remember Carvalho 3 or 4 years ago winning last minute and Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall going crazy on the sidelines. So it should be goals in that game. But Liverpool are so bad in the Premier League. I can't describe how bad they are in the Premier League. They've won 5 games in 18 in the Premier League since September. This is Liverpool Football Club. This is not Burnley or Wolves or Tottenham. They've won 5 games. Forget the Champions League. It's a completely different sport almost because it's so much slower. Anthony Gordon made a very interesting point in the week, how different it is and how much more time and space you get on the ball in Champions League and how less of a pace it is, less physical it is, and how many less transitions there are compared to the Premier League. When it's helter-skelter, you're running much higher speed, doing much more sprinting, doing much more physical duels. If you win your physical duels, you normally win the game, as per se, he was saying. And it's right. And it's just Newcastle should fancy their chances, even though they're bad away from home in the Premier League, because Liverpool are there for taking. They're not very good. And a 6-0 win and a 3-0 win in the last 2 Champions League games, you can kind of make it irrelevant. Liverpool at one point, whatever they are, 4-5 on, no thank you at all. They're rubbish, Liverpool. They are rubbish. They're not very good at the moment under Slot.
So I think Man United Fulham's interesting in as much as just whether Carrick can continue his what sort of performance they put in. Villa Brentford, I certainly wouldn't be rushing to back Villa in that game with the injuries they have at the moment. Obviously played last night. Don't know about Watkins. I think Brentford are quite suited just hitting teams on the break. Yeah, I would worry for Villa in that one a little bit, to be honest. I think Forest Palace is obviously going to be an interesting one. I mean, there's a bit of me that hopes Palace win and Forest tire dreadfully towards the end of that game, just to prove a point.
If Forest win that one, by the way, Palace really back in the relegation. They're in the relegation fight. If Forest pick up 3 points there on Sunday afternoon, Palace got to be careful because they've still got Europa League. They've got a tiny squad. There's a few changes going on there. Briefly talked about it earlier. You've got to be careful. And then the next 2 home games, I think, against Wolves and Burnley, they've got 3 relatively easy games looking on paper, Palace. Well, it can't get much easier, really. They need to pick up minimum, 7 points, you'd say, from those 3 games?
No, I wouldn't say it's as many as that. I think one of the points is that West Ham have only got 20 points. So if there were loads of other teams like just that bit closer, then I would say yes. But what you're basically saying is if Palace get, say, even 5 points from those 3 games, is West Ham have to find another 13 points just to pull level with them. And that's assuming Palace get no other points this season. plus goal difference. That's worth a point as well. Is this a West Ham team that's suddenly going to rack up? I mean, first of all, 14 points in the last 15 games, but then, if Palace get even one other win somewhere else, it's, I don't think they need a crazy return in those games, but what they definitely do need is a minimum of at least one win. And it's one of the problems Tottenham have got, actually, is that they have such a difficult set of fixtures coming up that it's going to be hard for them to actually get wins. So they obviously have Man City at home on Sunday. Very tricky game for them, particularly coming after the away trip in Europe with all their injuries. What they don't want, Tottenham, is to, I think if you look at their fixtures, I think the next 4 games are really tricky. If they suddenly pick up 0 points for the next 4 games and West Ham do pick up a couple of wins, suddenly Tottenham might only be 2 points away from the relegation zone.
Yeah, and City get Semenyo back and Mark Gay back will both start if they're not injured on Sunday, because they were just not cup tied, but they weren't registered in Europe for the last couple of games. They will be for the next set of fixtures coming up. Man City have got a decent record at Tottenham as well, so
they do dreadful against Tottenham.
Do? I thought they had a half decent record then. Was I looking at?
No, Man City have a horrendous record against Tottenham. Obviously, Tottenham beat them earlier in the season. I remember the game well because not much was happening, and then Tottenham literally took the first 2 chances, 2-0, and they actually saw out the game quite comfortably. No, Tottenham have an amazing record against Man City. And then the other one that's interesting, Chelsea, West Ham. I think it's quite a good time for West Ham to be playing Chelsea on the back of an away trip to Napoli. West Ham come into it in a little bit of form. I don't think it's a bad time for West Ham to that fixture there. What you need a little bit in the run-in is nice fixtures at the right times. So if you do get teams who have injured players or coming back from away trips in Europe and these sorts of things, it can make a big difference to your season.
Palmer to score an open play goal for a change rather than a penalty?
No.
That will be, London Derby game. West Ham full of confidence, like 2 decent results in the last 2 weeks away at Tottenham, at home to Sunderland. So, that's, they've got some goals in that team as well. Like Bowen will always create a chance. So, and Somerville looks like he's playing decent. Hopefully, he's still fit for West Ham.
Yeah.
Games in the Premier League are really easy anymore. That's the thing. They just aren't. And you have to work hard. You can't just stroll for a game now where you could just beat a side and go, oh, they won't turn up today and you'll win 2 or 3-0 and it'll be an easier game. That's long gone. You have to actually earn the right now to win a game.
Definitely. Obviously, there's a couple of other games, Sunderland, Wolves and Brighton. Just not as interesting, honestly, as the others. I'm just intrigued to see if Bournemouth can continue a bit of a revival recently. Would be the only thing there. Brighton, I think Brighton generally have underperformed this season, given that no Europe. I would worry for Hertzler at some point if they don't start playing a little bit better than they are. Sunderland, Burnley, contender probably for one of the worst games of the season coming in Monday night.
I won't be watching that one on Monday night. Not a Premier League game, that isn't.
Clearly, they didn't want to detract from the transfer window with picking that game.
Okay, good point. Yeah, don't want a big game. Put that game on. Everyone's watching, looking at scrolling through social media, who's buying who, and seeing Harry Redknapp in a car again.
So I think that's enough football. Let's touch on other sports quickly.
We just do a European roundup there. You got Spain and you got Barcelona playing Elche away tomorrow and Madrid at home to Vallecano. In Italy, you got Napoli at home to Fiorentina on Saturday. Inter away at Cremonese on Sunday, and Juventus playing Parma, and Milan away at Bologna on Tuesday night. They're not playing this weekend for some reason, AC. I don't know why. Scotland, Hearts away at Dundee tomorrow evening, same time I think as Liverpool, Newcastle. Rangers away at Hibs on Sunday, and Celtic at home to Falkirk on Sunday afternoon. And in the Championship, Coventry's lead is down to 3 points to Middlesbrough at the moment. So it was 10. So Frank Lampard is already starting his choking there at Coventry. But yeah, he's done a great job, to be fair, since he's taken over. But they're only 3 points clear of Middlesbrough. They are 5 clear of Ipswich. So that's a roundup of European.
Okay, let's touch on other sports quickly then. Golf, we've got the Bahrain Championship ongoing at the moment. Last time I looked this morning, Hill and Shot had pulled clear, actually. There were 5 and 6 shots clear, respectively. That may have changed now, but it's one of those ones where suddenly they put a lot of distance between themselves and the field. It's always one of those strange ones when you used to bet a lot on golf where your player was in an okay position after day one, and suddenly you're 13 shots behind or something stupid going into the second round. So they're both in pretty good position there.
Sorry, Luke. I'm just looking at the leaderboard as we speak at 11 o'clock on Friday. Callum Hill just shot 11 under. So he's 16. Just shot a nice 61 there. So he's 16 under. 4 clear of Freddie Schlott and 8 clear of your favourite Sharma. So yes, they are obviously you got Laurie Cantor still got 9 holes to play, but he's essentially 4 clear and 8 clear. So yeah, his tournament to lose.
So Farmers Insurance, obviously you've got the course split, North Course, South Course. North Course is always easier. Saw yesterday Justin Rose 10 under, Hideki 8 under. What was surprising was the 2 pre-tournament favourites, Xander and Oberg, struggled massively. Xander, he fought back actually to get it back to 1 over, so he's not completely out of it in tied 101st, but he would need to go crazy low today. And Oberg +6. Welcome to golf. It's a tough game.
And Brooks Koepka, he's 1 over as well.
So yeah, be interesting to see how that goes over the weekend. Rugby, I think obviously got 6 Nations. We'll talk about that next week on Monday in more detail. Obviously, game next Thursday when it starts. Anything else bad for rugby, James?
Yeah, the only thing is Bundiaki's banned for the first 3 games of the 6 Nations after abusing the referee in the game against Leinster in the United Championship last weekend. Pretty naughty from Bundiaki, actually, to be fair. Got a 4-game ban, which won this weekend, which he was never going to play. Yeah, 3. So he's first 3 games. And then the only thing is the French prop, unfortunately, suffered a heart attack last weekend in La Rochelle, so he's had to retire, and he's still in hospital intensive care. So hopefully he makes a swift recovery from that.
Cricket, obviously, England continue their pointless ODI series against Sri Lanka. Obviously, later in the week, we have 3 T20s. But that third ODI was actually some quite interesting cricket, just in terms of seeing Harry Brook go absolutely crazy, scoring 136, I think it was, not out. Root scored 100 as well. But as I said to you in a message at the time, James, do it when it matters.
Correct. Their first ODI, first T20, is today. Jofra Archer's back in the 11, made a quicker recovery from his side injury in Australia. The second one is on Sunday in Sri Lanka.
So obviously lots of other sort of small series going on. You've got India, New Zealand, South Africa, Windies, Pakistan, Australia. So also they'll just continue on until just preparation for the World Cup.
Yeah, 7th of February.
Darts, we have the Windmill Masters on ITV4. Littler plays Dodeka tonight. Humphreys plays Chisnall. The only interesting thing from last night was MVG lost to Damon Heta. Given how well Van Gerwen's played recently, getting obviously to a couple of finals recently, bit of a surprise, but not that exciting. Tennis, James, talk to me. Australian Open, obviously epic game this morning.
I'd actually totally forgotten it was on until it was on listening to the Irish radio this morning, and they were talking about our crowd. So I think it was the longest ever men's Open semi-finals, 5.5 hours or something ridiculous. Our crowd's beating Zverev in the 7-5 in the 5th set after being 2 sets to love up. Lost the 3rd and 4th on tie breaks. He looked pretty relieved, by all accounts, reading reports there briefly before coming on here, that he was almost out of it. So, yeah, he's through. And the match at the moment is Djokovic, who's had an easy... He didn't play one game, and then he was being battered against the Italian who had to retire. And he's now playing Sinner, and Sinner's 1 set to love up, just won the first set 6-3 Sinner against Djokovic in the final Sunday morning UK time, 8:30. And then the women's final tomorrow, Sabalenka's going to win tomorrow morning.
I was surprised. So she plays Ria Bakina, and I assumed Sabalenka would be a shorter price than she is. She's only 1.65 to win that. So, it's not a huge favourite. I thought she would be a bigger favourite.
She hasn't dropped a set this tournament, Sabalenka. I think she's on a 12 or 13 match unbeaten run as well. So the only one thing more about tennis is that Raducanu's sacked her coach, her 9th coach in 3 years or something.
Horse racing, James?
Hopefully the Dublin Racing Festival goes ahead tomorrow, and on Sunday there's a course inspection today at 2:30. Whether it goes ahead or not, it would be a shame if it doesn't go ahead. The course on parts on Tuesday was waterlogged. There's been an inordinate amount of rain here in the UK and Ireland in the last week or so. They did it, so hopefully that goes ahead tomorrow. The big race is the Irish Gold Cup at 3:30 tomorrow afternoon UK time. You've got Galopin Deschamps, Gaydit Warrior, who they're backing off the boards at the moment, into 6-1. Galopin is 11-8. No, 13-8, sorry. Affordable Fury, Factor File. I know the way you're thinking, the Gold Cup winner from Cheltenham last year. So that's a great race. The only shame is the Arkle race is now a 3-runner race because Cote de Bourget, hope I pronounced it right, isn't running, and hopefully he'll go straight to the Arkle on Cheltenham. So you'd imagine Romeo Kudo will beat Cargisi in that. And then on Sunday, you have the Irish Champion Hurdle, where declarations are out, I believe, at the moment. And just let me check. Hopefully, Lossie Mouse is up against Brighter Days Ahead. I'm just checking the declarations at the moment. And I can't see the declarations at the moment. So I'm sure. But anyway, that's really good race. And there's a couple of good races at Sandown in the UK tomorrow. So that's about it in the racing.
We'll talk Super Bowl next week. Obviously, it's on the 8th of February. So I also just want to say we've got a good question, actually. We'll answer it on Monday's Other Sports podcast relating to Jonathan Edwards. So just conscious of time on this one, we will get back to that follower about that question. Anything else, James?
No, all good. I do like the question, actually. if you've got any questions like that regarding anything you want to talk about, we'll go and have a look at it, watch it. I did have a brief look in the week about that Johnson Edwards and about other records, and other things came up as well. So it was quite interesting watching old footage of old sports when we were kids growing up, that kind of brain fog memories gone now. So it's always interesting to have a look at how different sports are and how they've changed, or how, in this case, it hasn't changed.
Okie dokie. Right, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
See you on a Monday. Bye-bye.